curse thee. And down through the years, we have been blessed because we have been consciously concerned for the benefit and the betterment of the Jew. We've, as a nation, have been so. So God has blessed us. But every nation that has fought against the Jew, and every nation that has cursed him, God said he will curse. And that's what's going to find its fulfillment down there. What you see in Genesis 12, 1-3 is going to find its fulfillment in the Valley of Decision. So that's going to find fulfillment, as will Joel 3, 17-21. Blessings on Judah. Joel 7:3, 17-21. So shall ye know that I am the Lord your God. Oh, just think they're going to have a motto, holiness unto the Lord. You'll know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall be no strangers pass through her any more. These are so beautiful. It shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine. I never get tired of reading the references to the beautiful time of the millennial and the glorious plan that God has for the future of the Jew. And the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come forth of the house of the Lord, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be a desolation. Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. This is what God thinks about it. But Judah shall just go on and on and on, shall dwell forever in Jerusalem from generation to generation. For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for the Lord dwelleth in Zion. Or in other words, he'll avenge the slaughterer of my people, which I have not up to now avenged. In Zechariah 12:10, they will look upon him and mourn. In Zechariah 12:10, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. And this will be a fulfillment of Psalm 2:6 also. Jesus the King will be enthroned. And just a couple lines in Psalm 2:6. Yet have I set my King upon my holy hill of Zion. That means he's enthroned, and he is the King on his holy hill. So the Lord hath chosen Zion. Psalm 132, 13 and 14 is a representative of these three. And it says, for the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. So the Lord has some beautiful, beautiful plans and designs for his country of Jerusalem. And Psalm 122:6 says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Do you ever find yourself praying for them? I do too. I'll find myself on my knees and think about the horrible struggles they've had with Lebanon and with Egypt and with Jordan and with all the other nations round about. Those who deal with the Jew over there, they're treading on very precious property with respect to God's mind and God's thoughts. And if there would be a psalm written, 122:6, that says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, they shall prosper that love thee. That's how God feels about that place. And you are wise if you will take a moment out sometime and remember to pray for that nation, because they surely need it, because they are godless. They are just almost devoid of any appreciation of spiritual things. Disasters should serve to turn men to God. That's a lesson from Joel. It's too bad that people just nurse their wounds and come to some other equation or reference for things that happen to them. I don't think anything happens to a child of God but what God plans it. And if it's of a nature of reversal in your life, then it's time for soul searching. And so it should cause us to turn to God. Judgment is inevitable. The guilty need not hope for escape. It's nature even teaches that. And great calamity should call for national repentance in prayer. In our Numbers 20, or I should say 90, number 90, the Jew is virtually indestructible. The Red Sea, Haman's gallows, the fiery furnace. You notice these as we go along here. The lions and more tried but couldn't destroy them. He will even survive the time of Jacob's trouble. Now that is one beautiful reference. As bad, number 92, as bad as that Jacob's trouble is going to be, to think that they actually could survive that. It's only because God intervenes and gives them sustenance. And then number 93, Jesus decides, not the multitudes. And Genesis 12:1-3 will find final fulfillment during this tribunal, when the Lord makes the judgment, who will survive, who won't. With Jesus now accepted and enthroned, the millennial can begin. Up to this point, it can't. Now he's accepted as a Messiah. See, with Jesus now accepted and enthroned, the millennial can begin. The Lord's plan is the same. He still chooses Zion for his earthly capital. That's going to be the capital of the world. Just think of it. The holy city, on the new Jerusalem, I should say, the old Jerusalem made new down on this earth, will be the capital of the world. And just in the event that I did not make reference up above, number 83, now the nations are called for a fight to the finish. It seems like I've ignored these. 84, their passion is to destroy the Jews. And number 84, to destroy the Jews. And 85, instead they will meet the judge of all the earth. What a shock that's going to be. They come down there to destroy the Jew, and instead of that they meet face to face with the judge of all the earth. And number 97, disaster should cause men to turn to God. And 98, there will be no escape for the guilty. And you see here, the only kind of a heart that God does business with is a broken one. A broken heart is the only sound heart that is available in God's sight, with which God can do any business whatsoever. And seeking God will bring Pentecost to any heart, anytime, anywhere, any place. If a man will really seek him, and he is enjoined to do so. In the event that you might think that this is a little picnic affair, and I know you don't, but the 13th verse of Joel 3, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. There's going to be a terrific slaughter. Every time you see wine, it represents human blood also. And in this instance, it surely does. So, just by reading and by investigation, the book of Joel takes on a whole new aspect, and I hope that the time we have spent in it tonight might add a little appreciation for this precious book of Joel, where the battle is going to take place. The battle is going to take place. Yeah, right down. God is going to judge all of these armies of the Antichrist. That's right. can't say chapters because there's only one. And 21 verses makes it one of the shortest books in all the Bible. One of them. Surely the shortest in the Old Testament as far as books go. Obadiah. Read the minor prophets? Do you think I'm some kind of a nut? Well, I suppose there is that feeling in the world, even in the church world. Why read the minor prophets when you can read the Psalms and read other beautiful portions of Scripture? But not much time is spent on that precious book. But there's a beautiful lessons to be learned, and one of them is the brotherhood of man has been turning out too few brothers and too many hoods. That's true too, because when you're thinking in terms of Obadiah, you're thinking of the Israel and Edom or Esau, and they're half brothers. And as far as compatibility, there was none. Nothing so difficult to read about is when families fight against families, and there's an estrangement of brotherliness where it ought to be, and it surely should be among relations. But oh, when relations get on the outs, even half brothers and half sisters, when they get on the outs, it just becomes that much more magnified into a horrible situation. We can understand enemies fighting each other, strangers fighting each other, but it's hard to find brothers fighting against each other. We don't like it at all. So the brotherhood of man hasn't really played the game straight with mankind. The theory is good, but it's not practical. Obadiah, the doom upon Edom. It's very simple. It could have been other than that, but since they had decided that the Edomites were going to be constant enemies against Jacob, and they were going to do despicable things, they had it in their minds to do so. They had no reverence for God. They were self-sufficient in themselves, and they were out to get Jacob, their half-brother. God took it upon himself to not only use Obadiah, he used Isaiah, Jeremiah, and others to refer to Edom and the ravaging judgment of God that was going to take place against them. But here's a whole book. A whole writer concentrates everything he has to say upon this country and upon this system. So it's the shortest book in the Old Testament. It only has one chapter and 21 verses. And his name means worshiper or servant of Jehovah. The only mighty fortress is our God. Number one, the only mighty fortress is our God. And two, we need more brothers and less hoods in the family of man. And that's gospel truth. When you think of all the violence and murders and evil that man perpetrates against his brother, that's extant in the world today. So number three, Obadiah has one, and that would be that Edom's doom. His book is the oldest, Old Testament shortest. There are only 21 verses in Obadiah, and his name means worshiper or servant of Jehovah. The first division of Obadiah, the destruction of Edom. That's just the first 16 verses. And then the last few verses is the restoration of Israel. Again, that little principle always keeps coming through. There's a little hope for Israel. That's a little thread that runs throughout all the prophets, that there is hope. It would be terrible to stand up and preach today, too, and put people in hellfire and preach judgment to them without giving them a chance to get out of it, without giving them a little way to have a little peace in their hearts. One man was preaching the wrath of God, or preaching such a high and holy way that the one man said, would you please just put the gate down so we can climb up to what you're talking about? Well, there's hope in every one of these books. There's a little bit of hope. And the destruction of Edom is definite, sure. In fact, it's so complete. You read in Obadiah, is it the 15th chapter? No, the 16th verse, not the chapter, 16th verse. At the end of the 16th verse, it says, and they shall be as though they had not been. In other words, no survivors. And who's going to find the Edomites today? Where are you going to read about the Edomites? How are we going to check upon their culture? Can you check upon Israel's culture? Can you look at the Jew? Sure, they're still here, they're indestructible. But the Edomites are gone. And the first division is the doom of Edom, and the second division is the restoration of Israel. So we're off and running on Obadiah. This is a beautiful way to say it. It's God's telegram to Edom. See, it's a little short, succinct, terse message to Edom. And the best way to describe it is as a telegram. And the date of delivery, that's a little difficult in some people's minds. Some say it's about 850 BC. Others claim to be 587, which seems to be more logical. Still others as far down as 312. But in the context of things, it looks like it was probably after Babylon came up against the kingdom of Judah to take it captive. And they also got involved with Edom too. So 587 seems to be the date for Obadiah, taking all things being considered. Obadiah 10 to 14 refers to Jerusalem's invasion and Edom's attendant violence. Since Jerusalem experienced repeated invasions, it is difficult to glean from the book which invasion he refers to. And Edom's treachery against Judah was long-standing. So that's why people have a difficult time making a definite dogmatic statement as to the time of Obadiah's book. But there's still sufficient to let you give a pretty good idea that it must be around 587. If it's true that 588 was the wind-up of the Jew and the burning of the temple. So Obadiah's book is like a telegram. In the 10th point, Obadiah's dates are debatable. Most authorities believe it to be about 587 BC. And number 13, Edom's violence to Judah during Babylon's invasion is recorded in 10:14. The verses 10 to 14. And for thy violence, it just starts out that way. Against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Oh, the terms used in Obadiah's book are so complete that it should give hope to a child of God now that even though evil is in the world and terror abounds, Psalm 94 speaks about it. It's a temporary triumph of the wicked. It's not going to last forever. And that puts a little courage and comfort in the hearts of God's people who have been under the power and pressure of evil men. Amos 1:11 says, Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, and that means multiplied transgressions, not just 3 and for 4, or many and more than enough is another way. It's just an idiom, a Hebrew idiom, for 3 transgressions and for 4. I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with a sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. So it spells out even in Amos that Edom was going to find the wrath and the judgments of God upon it. But even so, the Lord didn't want to stop at Amos. He didn't want to stop at Jeremiah and Isaiah. He wanted a man to write out the whole 21 verses and make it like a telegram. And you will read a telegram. And I don't know whether Esau or the people of Esau, when you say Esau, you mean all, like you say Jacob, you mean all of the people. I don't know whether they read this telegram, and I don't know how much Obadiah. This is very difficult to comprehend. Did they actually preach? Did Nahum go up there and preach to Nineveh? I can't prove it. Did Obadiah go down to Edom and preach? I can't prove it. But it's very difficult for me to think that God would have a whole book and not them know about it. At least this much can be determined. It was written to put confidence in the hearts of those who had suffered under their hand, so they should rejoice, because there's coming a time when the enemy is going to would be destroyed. That would put a peace in their heart if they had the stuff to respond to it. It is not generally known who Obadiah was, or where he was born, or of what tribe or family, his occupation, or exact time he lived. And it's another interesting aspect about Obadiah. His book isn't even mentioned in the New Testament. Most all of the Old Testaments find some reference in the New Testament. Jesus even referred back to the books of the law, and it is written when he talked to Satan. Other times he referred to the Old Testament. But this book is not quoted in the Old Testament. But that does not take away the authenticity or the canonicity of it. It never is quoted in the New Testament. It is the fourth in the minor prophets' Old Testament order. It sharply rebukes the Edomites, and it reveals the character and the final downfall of Edom. So when you're reading the book of Obadiah, it takes in quite a study on God's feeling about the first and the second. That which is first was natural, and that which comes after is spiritual. And so this struggle has gone on and on and on down through the Old Testament. And there's quite a few instances of where that which was first was natural, like Edom or Esau was first. And then Jacob came along. With all of his wrongs, he still wanted the birthright. With all of his wrongs, he still wanted the blessing. And Esau did not want it. He was happy to give it up for a mess of pottage. So he was really a profane and godless man. So Obadiah tells nothing of his life, and this is unique to many of them, and it emphasizes their willingness to step behind and let the truth that they prophesied about and wrote about would stand out and be all important. And that's why it's beautiful even today when people are empowered by the Holy Ghost. You don't go around bragging about yourself all the time or trying to push yourself forward. It's so beautiful just to be hidden behind the cross and let the Lord shine forth and continue to exalt the Lord and magnify the Lord. When you're doing that, you are hidden behind the things. You're not pushing yourself out. And it's just a beautiful aspect of the God-inspired ministry, that, or any one of God's people who are so taken up with the Lord that their conversation is about God, and all that they know about Him is a constant conversation, and they just live the testimony life. You don't think so much about them. Like one man said, he went to hear one preacher, and he said, "Oh, what a preacher." And then he went to hear another man, he said, "Oh, what a wonderful Jesus." So see, there's a big difference. That's right. His book is not quoted in the New Testament, number 17, and his book reveals the character and the downfall of Edom, very explicitly set forth. Isn't it beautiful? There's some things in the Bible that takes a little deeper investigation to find out what it's trying to say. But you don't have to do that all the time. Some things are so clear and some things are so evident that a little child can read it and come up with an answer. So here's some points to ponder, and I know that this is quite a heavy transparency, but there's quite a bit involved in this. This is just a little 21-verse chapter or 21-verse book, but how are you going to how are you going to just take something that implies such a great aspect and just skim over it? See, so Palestine was defenseless, easily accessible, but on the other hand, you've got Edom down there that 12 men could hold off a whole army, because you only got into Petra, into their chief hiding place, by narrow defiles, some place only 12 feet wide, and some place so deep that sunlight never got down there, a high, narrow cleft in the rock, the big old sandstone rock that was down in that God-forsaken area of Petra in Edom. And beautiful, talk about beauty. I've never been there, but I've seen so many personal pictures that have been taken by friends, and I'm not really all that anxious about going, because I feel like I've been there after studying Obadiah and seeing the pictures of places that I have seen, and I've got some pictures in here too that emphasize it. And I don't know whether they can be picked up from the camera or not, but I'll show you. Can this be picked up on the camera? This is a picture of Petra, or the entrance, the defile into Petra, where, as I said just a moment ago, 12 men, fully armed, could hold off a whole army. There's just no way they could get in there. This is only representative of that entire area. It's a long way in over a mile into the great opening that you come to finally. You come to a great opening eventually, and it is really a beautiful place that God's going to hide the man-child Jews. And I thought it'd be wise to just let you have a chance to see that before I went on. So the Edomites lived in a great hollow basin between mountains and high plateaus. Up on the plateaus they had their vineyards and their provisions. They grew tremendous crops, and they were self-sufficient. They didn't need great donkey trains coming across the desert to bring provisions to them. And they didn't need great armies to hold them off. They were very proud, very profane, very self-sufficient, and did not feel that any God was worthy of their consideration. Now, when a man gets that far gone, he is just almost to the brink of disaster and destruction. And so the Lord knew that this constant anger and hatred and animosity that they maintained against the kingdom of Judah was going to finally cause him to rise up in judgment against them. So Edom is pronounced, has its doom pronounced by Obadiah very definitely. The entrance to Petra was only through narrow defile, and Edom harvested rich crops on their plateaus. The slopes produced rich vineyards and farms, and they were proud and profane, no God. Now, profanity, we all understand what that is. But when the Bible says that Esau was profane, it means more